Sex workers of Reddit, who was the grossest customer you've had? I had a guy that just wanted me to spit full globs of phlegm in his mouth while laid on his back with his mouth wide open. I'm rarely grossed out, but I just can't deal with copious amounts of spit or phlegm. It took so much effort not to throw up just from seeing it slide past his tonsils. On the other end of the spectrum, I had a guy who liked to just lay on the sofa while I sat on him and watched TV. Human furniture fetish is definitely my favorite type of booking. Dude offered me $500 to adopt a dog and have sex with it. I very firmly declined. $10 to literally make his bed. I'm not a maid, but $10 is $10. Was a stripper. The ones who tell you that you look like the daughter or daughter's friend are pretty gross. Foot fetish dudes would come in at the end of the night, and the sweatier your feet were the better. Most girls love them though because they give amazing foot rubs and pay you for it. Had a guy come in and lay on the floor and pay me to try to fart on his face. Honestly, a lot of girls like ones like this too. They pay really well and you don't have to really do any work. Condom avoiders. Those who just plain reeked of beau, cheesy feet, dirty ass, too many cigarettes, and who were complete strangers to a toothbrush. People who were scabby and scaly with suspicious sores in places you definitely don't want to see lesions. The guy who loved people to fart on him and in his mouth wasn't too flash either, but you got a laugh out of it at least. Phone worker here. I had a guy wanted me to put bodily excretions role play on him. I was so stumped. So I said, if you've been a bad boy, I'll piss on your face. If you've been a good boy, I'll shit in your mouth. Cue the minute-long groaning, grunting and screaming the guy did with what I could only assume was the filthiest, never-ending tsunami of spunk, followed with a thank you mistress. I logged off for the day, and did other things. I have no problem with kinks or fetishes, but he acted like he won the lottery. Looks like mama raised a polite man. Not really a sex worker, but I stripped for a bit in college. The amount of older guys saying things to me like tell me your real age or don't worry, your little secret is safe with me, while grinning terribly was always gross. I look young, so that wasn't very pleasant. It got worse when they would try and blackmail me into actual sexual contact by saying they'd reveal my actual age. Fortunately I was 19, so could just tell them to go ahead and do it. Not my story, but I heard it from a friend. You know how girls will spit on your dick to lube it up before blowing you? There was this one customer who told his girl for the night that it was wasteful to spit on his dick and requested that she spit in his mouth instead. For every time she spit in his mouth, he would give her $10. I once had a threesome with a couple who was really into spitting. They both took turns spitting in my mouth. They also really enjoyed putting their feet in my face and making me lick them. Go figure. Not a sex worker, I'm just slutty. From being a stripper, this guy smelled gross. Paid for 5 minutes in a private room. Everything goes well. The typical no touching private parts thing. He didn't want to pay for more time. So I was putting my clothes back on and he just hugged me really tight. Then kneeled and tried to lick my pussy. I have two different guys that I'll never forget. The first was one that wanted my feet to be filthy, dirty and stinky if possible. Then I had to smash one foot in his face and get him off with the other foot. The other guy wouldn't let me turn on any lights at all, and when I got undressed I touched him and found his one ball was the size of a pillow. It freaked me out so bad I told him I started my period and needed to leave pronto. There's many more, but these two guys always stand out. I work at a sex store. We have a guy whose kink is cleaning, so he went to the arcades, glory holes and cinema and pulled all the used condoms out of the garbage can and ate the cum in them. We also have a dude that likes to lick doorknobs and another one who smells the used paper towels. A friend of mine worked in the office for an escort agency. The grossest story she told me was about a guy who seemed to have a thing for cutting women up with his long fingernails. After the first complaint, he was put on a list of don't accept bookings from this guy. But he kept using burners and different names. And every time the girl would complain that he'd basically only want to finger them. But he had long sharp nails and had a habit of scraping. Then get agitated when asked to stop. Then he'd leave. Just so gross and borderline psychopathic. Way back in the day when I was a stripper, I was giving a dance. The room was dark and I was giving a lap dance to a usual customer. The customers were allowed to touch as long as it wasn't any no-no zone. So I was sitting on his lap. No grinding. his hands to his side, and I randomly felt warm goo hit my back. I have no idea how I didn't notice anything sticking out or how he managed to get off with no physical touch. But I was mortified. I got up, demanded my pay, and quickly ran to the bathroom. Had to have the bouncer escort him out. Yes, not a sex work, but a sexy worker. I'm not a sex worker, but I did run a bar opposite one of Edinburgh's infamous saunas, sort of legal brothel the police turned a blind eye to. Anyway, the girls used to come into my bar once their shift was over for a well-earned drink, and so I got to know some of them pretty well. Inevitably, conversation would turn to their clients' kinks. Two spring to mind. The High Court judge who came in to be spanked and be told he needed to be punished. Not that exciting. But the one I can never forget was the peanut butter man. He would come in the day before with a massive bag of peanuts for his favorite girl and book an appointment the next day where the girl would shit on him and he would smear it all over himself saying I'm the peanut butter man over and over. I could never get that image out of my mind. Edit. Wow, this blew up. This is my most upvoted comment ever. Thank you for the gold and silver. Never had these before either. My wife's best friend is a very successful cam girl. She was pregnant and some dude was paying her thousands to watch her take her pregnancy supplements. She made an absolute fortune when she was pregnant. He would make baby sounds to her while she did it. He would check in on her and make sure that she was hydrated and well fed. He started gifting organic foods over Amazon. I personally saw her play Jenga with her clothes on and dudes were bidding for which piece to move. I couldn't believe my eyes. I still don't. Someone paid her thousands to have dinner one night. She hired security and he paid for the security to make sure he didn't touch her. It became a steady gig. Free food and thousands of dollars. I'm a part-time cam girl. One day a guy paid me $30 to watch him masturbate and barking while wearing his socks on his ears. Lasted less than a minute and it was very surprising. I went through a brief stint of sleeping with men from Craigslist for money when I was going through a very rough financial time when I was 20. It was a very dark time. There were some unshowered dudes. Some who smelt bad, overweight. Sure, but if they were nice, their looks didn't bother me. The grossest ones were the guys who forced anal without asking, refused to wear condoms, or haggled with money. I got to the man's house, and he wanted me to pour bleach on my titties. I literally just walked right out and never looked back. So I was a male stripper predominantly for bachelorette parties, but about 3 times a month I'd work the actual club to make ends meet. I was 18 and finishing up high school. One night I'm there and the manager says there's a guy willing to pay $2,000 for 2 hours with me. It's a straight club but half the dancers are gay and eat that stuff up, plus with a no touching rule. It's whatever. His only stipulation was that we not turn the lights on. He didn't want to be seen. This was the early 2000s and closet cases were more reserved then. That said, I go in to dance. I dance for about 20 minutes and he says something that makes my skin crawl. Tell me you're only 15. I was disgusted, but this was money I needed. I'm not proud, but I said it, though I couldn't get over the familiarity in his voice. He continued on with stuff like that. Having me say I was 15 over and over. Having me say I was running late for English class, etc. He just wanted me to pretend I was a little younger than I was. Then he said it. Call me Coach Bellum. Coach Bellum was my 9th grade football coach and a fervent creep who wandered into the boys' and girls' showers during use a few too many times and got fired the year after I had him as a coach. I went to beeline for the door as soon as he said it. There's no way he didn't recognize me after all. He picked me because he knew 14 to 15-year-old me. When I clearly got up to move, he grabbed me around my waist and just licked my stomach and said, I can give you all the money you need. Let me have this. I broke his nose, got out, and got the bouncers in there. To my knowledge, he was the first and only person we ever banned from returning there. Apparently we didn't need to though, as he got jailed just a couple months later for molestation of a family member. He was grimy. Not a prostitute. But I was sexting with a customer who wanted to rub my vagina juices all over his gums because all of his teeth had been removed the year prior and had been replaced with metal plates in his gums. He said this all in the same breath. Dentists hate this one weird trick. So, former cam girl here, I would have assumed this guy was trolling, but he just seemed so earnest and had already tipped me like $600 that night. Sue, I have a cat. And he wanted me to go get a piece of cat shit from her litter box. It up my ass. And then poop it back out for him. He said he had $3,500 to spend to make it happen. Obviously, I didn't do it, and decided that was enough camming for me that evening and bid him goodnight. Still, I think about that guy a lot. That guy. I wonder if he ever got anybody to do it. The guy who refused to pull out even after he came. He became semi-flaccid and was still trying to stay inside as much as he could. Then when he finally was flaccid, the D slipped out itself. That's the kind of guy who keeps eating at a buffet even though he's full because it was more expensive than it seemed when he was hungry.